Kwadjo Campbell is back to talk about affordable housing, unity, Walter Scott, and of course, the Mother Emanuel AME tragedy for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, Kwadjo, you know a lot of Charlestonians haven't seen in a while.
All right, I'm here. I'm in and out of town all the time.
That's what I hear. In fact, you actually wrote this on your Facebook page on June 28th. You said, "Hey Charleston, I'm back to finish what I started, and I have a big announcement. I'm back to finish what I started" sticks out in my mind because I have to ask the obvious. What are you back to finish?
I don't know if you all remember, but way back in the day, I talked about this thing called gentrification.
Sure.
And the potential for us to lose the rich diversity that is one of the things that makes Charleston unique.
Sure.
So here we are years later. Real estate market has rebounded. The economy has rebounded.
Sure.
And we see gentrification unfolding, manifesting before our eyes. And so I've come back, and the fact that I've opened up an office here on America Street. Our firm is an economic development, planning, urban planning, and political development firm. So we're working on a number of projects that will address these types of issues, both affordable housing and economic development in our communities.
Ironically, I saw a flyer on Facebook that stated the East Side Community Revitalization Master Plan, that is. And the flyer basically says that the city has said no to a couple of things. The $200 million project, affordable housing, renovation to Martin Park and whatnot. And I have to ask you another obvious question. What will you say yes to?
Well, when we talk about saying no, it was a civil rights mandated agreement between the South Carolina DOT and the city of Charleston.
Right.
And in that agreement, the city was given the 8.3 acres of property on the Cooper River Bridge,
Right.
$3 million of money to be used for urban renewal development project,
Right.
and the trolley barn. All right. All of this was to benefit the low-income minority populations adversely, negatively impacted by the Cooper River Bridge development.
Right.
Those would be the East Side communities, and that would be the East Central communities.
Right.
All right. So what has happened? The trolley barn has gone to the School of the Building Arts and parallel development to develop a multi-million-dollar mixed-use real estate development.
Yeah.
The $3 million was spent on Hugie Street, what's going there, market rate housing for upwards of $2,000 a month rent.
Right.
A hotel, 5-star hotel going up there, 5 floors high, and other market rate housing is slated along that development. A slew of restaurants have popped up along Hugie Street, none of it catering to the traditional African American communities that live in that come from that community. And so we look at what's next, the 8.3 acres. And we see that a hotel is just last weekend, a hotel is being proposed for the edge there. We hear the cigar factory has a deal to put some kind of parking space and deck there. We know about the housing authority deal that the city has laid out with the housing authority, where only about 30% of that housing is going to be for affordable housing, and then only seniors. What about families? A long time ago, the community got together and said what they wanted for that site, and this is not what they wanted. They wanted that site to be the catalyst for an economic renaissance on the east side, filled with affordable housing, affordable commercial real estate opportunities for minority business opportunities. They wanted that to be a catalyst for cementing our presence here and the community.
You know, you were a city councilman from what, 1997 till
2005.
And in that time, I want to ask you, from that time till now, what is the biggest difference in your mind?
The biggest difference in the city of Charleston then to now is, I think, back then we as a city government didn't allow for such a contrast between the old and the new.
Okay.
I think that we struck a good balance of having modernization, but within the context of Charleston's historic character, right? Modernization, but within the construct of it. And architects will argue that they're still doing that. But when you look at the scale and size of a lot of these buildings that are popping up in downtown Charleston, inside neighborhoods like the East Side, where I've got traditional shotgun-style houses, beautiful, majestic buildings, right? Being towered over by a new structure, that's 10, 15 feet higher. That's obtrusive, to the character of the community. And so I think that's the biggest difference. You look along Spring Street, you look along Cannon Street, the size and the scale of those houses, those are traditional communities, Charleston historic communities. And I think that's the biggest difference. We already know about the gentrification and displacement that's been happening. I think back when I was on council, there was an article came out where they said 10,000 had moved from downtown to North Charleston. So gentrification has been going on, so that ain't nothing new. But what is new is the way we've allowed the new to really not blend in with the old in a way that protects the character of Charleston, the history of Charleston. That needs to be addressed by the mayoral candidates in this next election.
And speaking of which, I don't know if you've spoken publicly about this, but you are working for Maurice Washington's campaign.
Our firm is working with Maurice Washington.
And tell me why he?
Well, Maurice, tell you how it came about. Our firm has been coordinating a number of gentrification forums, community benefit agreement forums, because we represent, we're an urban planning group, so we represent a number of community-based organizations here in the Charleston area, from Canehoy to the East Side CDC. So they've been asking us to do the research and put together a number of proposals and recommendations to combat the gentrification, zoning laws that we could recommend, land use recommendations that we could recommend that would help preserve diversity on the peninsula. And so at one of these events that we were at, matter of fact, pastors hosted the meeting. And, Dudley Gregory got up and said that, I'm sorry, there's nothing that I can do. There's nothing we can do. It's basically, he was saying it's too late, right? But I knew that not to be so, right? It's not too late. We still own significant land, and we still can own significant land, and we can become developers. We can become the masters of our fate, the controllers of our destiny. It's not too late. And so after I got up and I talked about the zoning recommendations and the land use recommendations and a gentrification task force plan being revisited by the city council, these are things that he could do as a city council member. After I said these things and I was walking out, Maurice Washington approached me and said, who are you giving these policies to? What campaign? And I said, well, I'm not really talking to anybody right now. I'm just, working on the East Side plan and the mitigation piece and, the African American Tourism Conference. That's it. He says, oh, hey, let's sit down and talk. And so that began a series of discussions about economic development, dealing with diversity and inclusion. It began a discussion about infrastructure development, drainage in our communities, parks and playgrounds and recreational programs in our communities. It talked about, we began a discussion about second chance programs for offenders in our community, give these young people who really want a second chance an opportunity to be trained. We talked about opportunities to create a workforce training program with Trident Tech, who's right here on the East Side, to plug into jobs on the port, to plug into jobs at Boeing, to plug into the jobs that are coming into our six-dimensional economy. So as that discussion grew into, we'll help you develop policies, we'll help you get your message out into the community, we'll help talk to the African American community about your policies and how it's going to benefit this community. So that's how it happened.
June 17, 2015, I was actually at home that night, and I was actually laying on my bed, and I was on Twitter and got the news about 9 people shot at Emanuel AME Church, and I thought, again, it was inaccurate information. When you think back to that day to now, where are you emotionally still 1 month later?
I was in Milwaukee. We had our development group had just opened a veterans housing complex, and then so all the development partners from around the country, from Arizona came. Me representing the Carolinas, I came for the grand opening. Bankers were there, investors were there. It's a good time to network and build. So after dinner, we're sitting at the bar. I'm sitting at the bar having a drink, and someone, Bob taps me on the shoulder and says, "Kwadjo, isn't that your city?" And I look up on the screen and I saw Emanuel, AME Church, and 9 shot and gunmen opened fire. It was surreal.
Right.
I couldn't believe it. The days following, very emotional. Coming back into the city, people, everybody wanting your opinion, your reaction. Friends organizing events. I had one of my friends organized an event, and I went there to help him just because I didn't want it to get out of hand. And I wanted because his heart was good. His heart wanted to help people express their anger, because everybody wasn't about forgiving.
Right.
Oh yeah. As one guy said, they didn't ask for forgiveness. Why are we forgiving? But we understand the spirit of forgiveness and the power of forgiveness.
Sure.
All right. But I think with the frustration of the people who are angry is that, what are you going to do now? After the grand displays of unity, after bringing down the flag, Confederate flag, what are we going to do? One, to have a discussion, to have Mayor Riley, College of Charleston, bring together some of the great thinkers of our city, our state, and our nation, to talk about a real plan to deal with racism, institutional and individual. What are we going to do about that? That's the first thing that needs to happen. Second, what are we going to do to address the economic inequities, the results of this institutional racism that we find ourselves still mired in here in the 21st century? Those are the 2 things that needs to take place. What's next? That's where the frustration and anger comes, because tragedies have happened before.
Sure.
We have come together as a community and a broader community and recognized evils and wrongs before.
Right.
But as the president said, we've always slipped back into a comfortable silence. That's where the frustration and anger comes from. Is that, are we going to slip back into a comfortable silence? And I fear, when you talk about issues like gentrification, and us trying to get zoning laws passed, or even heard, right? Trying to get zoning recommendations or land use recommendations passed, or even heard, right? Seriously considered. When we talk about mitigation plans, totally against the wishes of the community. Eastside CDC and East Central, they're ready to go full steam to fight against this. But they want to sit down in the spirit of Emanuel AME. But when you can't even get heard, right? So when you talk about after Emanuel AME, I want to see us as a city really do something.
Describe to me the following one word: Walter Scott.
Well, in one word: reform.
Tyreek Gadsden.
Reform.
The Charleston County School Board.
All of them. Any word, any institution that you're going to name, because when you talk about Walter Scott, you're talking about an institution, the North Charleston City Government. That's who killed him, all right, via the North Charleston Police Department. When you talk about young Brother Gatz, Black Lives Matter. Our young black men need to know that too. It's not just the white police officers in our local government that needs to know that. Our young men need to know that too. So, but why are these young men out here in the streets wilding out? It's because the #1 economic development and job creator for young black men is the drug trade in both the city of Charleston and the city of North Charleston. There is no plan to train and educate these young men and tie them in to what is a booming economy here in Charleston. And so what they do, they get money by any means necessary. And a lot of people fall victim in that scenario. So when I say reform, I'm talking about reforming our local governments so that we address these inequities as far as economic development planning, as far as infrastructure development, and creating decent parks and programs for our communities, our children to feel safe in. You know what I mean? These are the things. Look at our communities and our parks and our streets and our sidewalks in North Charleston. Just juxtapose Mixon Avenue, where they redeveloped that area, all right, to what it used to be, and the black communities surrounding it that are still in shambles, right? Compare that. Think about the infrastructure development and funds and taxpayer dollars that went in to beautify that area, right? Versus what is extended in those other communities, or what was even extended in that community prior to the affluent moving in. You know what I mean? We want equities. We want fairness. That's the reform we're talking about. So when you name any of those things, school board, oh my goodness, I don't even need to go there. Doc William, Doc Scott, excuse me, and Reverend Darby has told us all about the shenanigans of the Charleston County School District and their inequities. Let me say this.
Okay.
Gotta go back to North Charleston, Walter Scott, because it's connected to the school district.
Okay.
I commend Mayor Summey of North Charleston for standing up with the NAACP and condemning the lack of diversity at the Charleston County School Board and the selection of its new superintendent.
Dr. Drita Postway.
I commend Mayor Summey on doing that, and his son Elliot Summey standing with him. But why have you not sat down with the NCCCR, which are 20 plus organizations in North Charleston, from neighborhood associations, the churches, etc., to talk about the inequities in your own government? The fact that your zoning boards don't represent the communities that make up 70% of North Charleston, right? Or your boards or commissions aren't diverse. Why haven't you sat down with them and discussed a plan to make that happen in the government that you control in a strong mayor form of government? So I commend what he's done with the city, with the school board, and speaking out on that. But you've got power as a mayor, as a strong mayor, in the city of North Charleston to do something about diversity in your own government. We ask that you do it, Mayor Stanley.
And you speak about North Charleston. It sounds like somewhere down the line, one day you want to run for mayor of North Charleston.
I have no intention to run for mayor in any municipality. What I'm doing is I'm building my firm, JC & Associates, and I'm going to develop housing. I'm going to develop commercial buildings. I'm going to put black contractors to work. I'm going to build black schools. I'm going to help open up black businesses. Maybe we'll develop a black bank. Those are the types of things that I will do. I will organize real estate deals so that black churches can open up grocery stores like Mount Moriah. Imagine if Mount Moriah and Royal got together with a developer that will give them a reasonable lease, right, to open up a grocery store. We also help them bring in a national chain retailer to help them with their branding, right? And that store would be a success overnight. Those are the things that I'm going to do, not as mayor, but in the private sector.
So in other words, you're done with politics.
Again, my firm is also a political development firm, so we do run campaigns, we do write public policies, we do deal with economic development policy. So I'm still in the game, but not as an elected official.
All right. Well, Kwadjo Campbell, it's always good talking to you. Thank you so
My
much.
man.